Wow, where do I even begin? I mean, that's the real question. Where do I even begin? Because we don't have a beginning, we don't have an end. We've created one though. And that creation of the beginning and the end is called time. So I'm gonna show you something unique. I'm gonna show you exactly how to become weightless, meaning no longer will you be waiting on anything because there'll be no such thing as time. It'll be the gateway to instant manifestation and actually the bridge to when the first human physically flies here because they realize how to become weightless through this knowledge. So here we go. First and foremost, today is actually known as the change of guard. Like I've been looking at some YouTube videos. Mainly today, I just checked and see, okay, so what's really out there? Because I don't fill my head with prophets and prophecies and all that kind of stuff. That's basically expecting something to happen, and then the anxiety of when that date starts drawing close, right? And that anxiety, it produces a weight in itself. It's how we can create weight in our mind. Like, have you ever been closer and closer to some kind of bill that's due or whatever? And then as you get closer, it just starts to weigh on you more and more and more. And its weight increases, meaning its value per se increases with you. So this will show you how weight and time are relative. But first, before we get into that, I'm going to demystify this entire thing around this eclipse. Now, first of all, this is also, yesterday is known as the day of the joker or the day of the jester. And it's because when you see the king, right, which is what the sun is proclaiming that it is on this dimension, it's external though. There's an internal sun, there's an external one. So the external one is known as that old king. Okay, and that external sun always has before it the jesters or the jacks or the jokers. Okay, and that's just like you see it in the movies where they show the king and the jester and the juggler is right there in front of him. So if you notice that yesterday we lost some jesters on the dimension because they came in front of the king. And I'll explain that. And that's, of course, Jerry Lewis. And, of course, the Honorable Dick Gregory. Okay, so let me just demystify this once again before we get, too far ahead. I know some people got to go to work and they got this time issue. See, where I'm at today is I'm showing you how to demystify time so you could get your time back, so you could get completely off a time system, out of a zodiac, and then into even beyond what can be conceived in this language. That's what we're talking about right now. This is the power day for you, nothing else. So you would have to ask yourself, how do you synchronize time? Like if I tell you, yeah, there's a galactic clock, there's a circadian rhythm, there's all these different clocks. And let's say you even have a watch piece, right? Like a really nice watch piece, that's your body. But how do you synchronize your body, your watch piece, to the whole system so that you know what time it is? The only way, let's say if you lost an idea of what that time was, because see, we're so skeptic. So when somebody says, oh, every Bach ton is 26,000 blah, blah, blah years. And, we can hear all that knowledge, but then we're so skeptical because we've been abused by the matrix and its lies. We're like, well, how can I believe in that? And then Flat Earth throws another wrench in there and says, well, if it's flat, all this stuff is off. So how can you synchronize yourself with what time it truly is? And how you can do that is by watching. Just like it says, surely if you can watch the sky and know that it's raining, that it's going to rain, why can't you predict the future? Why can't we watch the realm to see what exactly is going on than trying to read it in a book somewhere? And that's what I do. And then when you're tapped in and you learn certain knowledge about things, the blueprint of the mechanics, which we teach in the university, this taps you into realizing what exactly is going on. So let me demystify it a little bit more. So this is an Arcanum. Let me grab my stylus here and show you a couple things. So I got to write small here because there's going to be a lot on this board. So this is called Arcana. Okay, and the word that we see here is arc, And we talked about those arcs the last time we got on to this. And so to go further, because that's what actually creates the units of time, what you actually have to ask yourself is, so this arcana also means a secret or hidden. So it means that even the knowledge we talked about yesterday or day before, it's secret and hidden. Remember, I have no concepts of time, by the way. And so this secret or hidden arcana, what is it anyway? And a part of it is actually the zodiac. Okay? And this word actually comes from the priests of Zod, which were also known as the priests of Sod. And if you kind of like even look up the group that is that name, you get an idea of what eventually that whole system degraded into. So in this, because they attempted to reinvent the wheel, but this system, let's say for instance, this is a system of a 12 cycle zodiac. Okay? So this zodiac that we're dealing with right now, that most people believe it is on a system of 12, which is based on the months, okay? But where all this knowledge comes from is, let's say, for instance, when I guess the beings that were on Earth decided they wanted to start reading, the first people to actually begin to write down things, one of those groups, because there was, there was a 7 spectrum first going on. That's why nobody can figure out who came first. One of the documentations that we have is actually the Sumerians, the Sumerian documentation, okay? And in this Sumerian documentation, they're basically hiding a code also. Everything has always been mystical and encoded that's around the king. And their king was known as Anu, okay? Now, in a cycle then, one Anu is basically one turn of the disk. Okay, so this is Anu is actually where we get our word annual, which means 1 year. Okay, so this is the system of time, and this is actually where it comes from. And if you notice, the Sumerians actually named their gods after numbers. There's 50, who's actually running around the dimension right now, half nuts like wild Marduk, and still can't figure out how to control all that energy. Every single entity from the Sumerian pantheon is actually running around the planet right now. And their king, who knows what their king is up to? Last time I checked, they subdued their own king. So in this entire cycle, this Anu, okay, this was known as the wheel, okay? Now the Sumerians, they have different wheels. That's why when you see Marduk, and he has all of these different stars encrusted inside of his body, because those are the wheels of times or the cycles. Now, this knowledge that I'm talking to you about is known as the Cabal. That's why also it means hidden. Okay? So this Cabal is actually a cognate of the word cable, which everyone is familiar with, I would assume. And a cable is, of course, this. The beginning should connect to the end on the cable. And this is the secret Cabal. Okay? Now, this is known as a wheel because these wheels are also known as discs, okay? And it's because the ancient knowledge reveals that in the sky, the stars actually were an encoded disk. So just as your mind can be affected by sun and moon, so too there are other things that you can be affected by if just based on your own resonance. And you can learn how to tune your vehicle properly so that way you don't actually really get too much influence and things that actually take you off your path or off your own wheel, okay? Because this secret system is kept secret for a reason with the priests of Sod, because they are controlling time with concepts, okay? And as long as those concepts are mystical to everyone and it's like a mist and people can't see it, they can't get through that fog. And that fog is actually the space between life and death. Like when something dies, where it goes, what's in between there is like the cartilage on your fingers and like a vaporous fog that you can walk into but seem to can't penetrate. And this is exactly how you will penetrate it, is by knowing the code. To code to this mainframe is a 26-letter code. We're talking about the English language, a 26-letter code. But anytime we see numbers like this, simple math right away goes 52, because that's the number when it reaches its perfection, and that's an entirely different class. But the number when it reaches its perfection is 52, so this gives us some kind of gauge to what kind of system we're talking about here when we're talking about the language known as English, because it would be a code, and a lot of people would be programmed with that code. They say when every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess is when everyone in the entire universe knows English, or the entire world knows English, because the God lives inside of the language. The king lives inside of the language, right? So how this language became Kabbalistic, it's basically English. It's the language of the angels. So this English, first of all, the hidden part is another 26. So you get 26 letters, right? A to Z. And then there's another 26, and we know that because this word 52 actually gives us how many weeks there are in a year. Okay? And the reason why this is important is because this would be the Anu. This would be the God of English, is this code of 52. Okay? So now what happens is that this 52 weeks in a year is very connected to what we know as this tarot. Okay? Because this is the English tarot. Now this tarot also gives us the word, is a cognate of the word rota, which is what you see in the occult books, rota, which is where we get our word rotate. Okay, so we know that we're talking about a wheel because a wheel rotates. So tarot is known to be a hidden system of changes, but it's also a code that actually can be changed. Like sometimes they say, hey, don't reinvent the wheel. Well, the beings that developed this system actually attempted to reinvent the wheel, and it's broken. It's broken because most people only have half of it, and that would look like this. All right, so if the Kabbalah is complete like this, and it's only half, you have this, but this is a letter, and it's D, right? So now we start realizing why the word divided, Diablo, destruction, deceitful, all those words begin with D, because when something is only aware of half of what it is, it starts to live in an illusion of what it truly is. And that's what comes from it. That's why I say, look at what God had wrought, meaning look what you have created in this deceit. You see what I mean? Beings that know how to create and not being aware of the other half. This becomes synonymous with why we can't see the other half of the moon. That is the Cabal. Okay? So to move on here, because, I'm just giving you a real, for those who study and for those who need to study, you could just go check in on this and be like, there's no doubt. These are clear proof. It's, as my shirt says, it's common sense. But common sense ain't common. So now let's talk about what exactly is happening in the world and your empowerment. Today is the day of empowerment for you, because this is not also like, it's not just today. There's been a lot that's been building up till today. In your own innerverse, there's something that's been going on, and you've been occultated. You've been learning different things. You've been having these different experiences. Some been going on certain substances, some been fasting, cleansing, meditating. So all this has been going on. So there's an invisible college that's been dealing with everyone. And in that, you get to this point where you realize, okay, I do have power, but what shall I do? How can I control it? So there's a lot of questions after that, and that's what we call the quest. We've ended the quest at Secret Energy. There's no more of, hey, let me just download information. We're uploaders. And we have the knowledge and the wisdom and the experience to keep pushing with that. So to understand this solar eclipse, what's happening is that it is the procession in the death of the king. Okay? It's called the change of guard. It's when the old system as it is goes out, and then the new system comes in. It would be like our presidency, but that's that's on their days. This is the galactic one. And in the change of guard, it's the perfect time for the complete rewriting of all the treaties. And what sovereigns do, this is the day where you don't go into worshiping and praying and calling upon other gods and other things, because then that's going to connect you right again with that until the next cycle, right? This is the time that you now can become truly sovereign within yourself by knowing today that you're basically the ruler of your own throne, the Lord of your own life, the master of your completion. and that there is nothing that you bow down to, and there are no gods before you. Okay, so this is the day for that. And let's get into this a little bit deeper on how we know. So we know that according to, again, it's not according, the Navajo had all the knowledge. I mean, there's so many tribes. I mean, the Mamis, the Taitas, the Aztecs, and the knowledge they left. I mean, they all talk about these days extensively. And even if you went to archive.org and started just typing in to look for that knowledge, you will find it right there. It's because lack of knowledge why we perish. It's not because you just got to wait for somebody to come in and bring the knowledge to you. Maybe you're the one to bring the knowledge to everyone else. But I will tell you that it is all there. And in that, it talks about this process of the exchange. Now, Saturn was the previous sun, but we don't know how many sun cycles have already gone by. There was another total solar eclipse in 1979 that went across the United States. This one that's coming across is starting on the 33rd parallel. How you know, which is in Oregon, Salem. How you know it has to do with the king is because Melchizedek is the king of Salem. And the Melchizedek reign, which is basically the whole of the Jesus and all the external entities that this entire pantheon that has been bringing forth all of what it's been doing right now, for better or for worse, they are now going out and something new is coming in. I'm telling you that new can be you. Completely right now, this is how you could become weightless. If you get back under the reign of the kings and the sun systems, then they're saying basically, I need to take in this light. You have your own light that burns within. And that light people need the most. Like our children, everyone is a child based on their vibration and frequency. If a person's a child, it's a vibration and a frequency. If a person's wise, it's a vibration and frequency. So to restore that entire harmonic system, we are the ones accountable for doing that. And to do that, you need power. And this power is vivid. The body is electric. And this power, you'll feel coursing through you. And you know that this power is going into your manifestation. And so this is not just a belief. The mind and its thoughts are still weak. They need to be grounded and they need to be firm and into a firm vibration. But anyway, let's keep going. What we're talking about is the moving out of the old king. So how this works is if you look in Wikipedia and you look up where did the Joker card come from, you'll find that, of course, in tarot, the 0 card is the Fool, right? And that's the beginning of the tarot. Now, this Fool card is also known as the beginning and the end. So when you see that, it's like that same saying. They say at the end of the game, the king and the pawn go back in the same box. Okay? So they're just saying when you see the disc completely turn one time, you'll see the king and the pawn actually go back into that same cycle and curl up. And then it's that time you make your massive awakening, escape, whatever you want to call it, into yourself. And keep boosting. So today is not meant to be a very long conversation. I'm just here to tell you to really get control of yourself now. Like I said, it's not just about today. It's what also everything has been building up to at this point. Know that that's why it's also a new moon. Those kind of alignments are indeed serious because the eclipse didn't necessarily last time fall on the full moon. It actually fell on, I think it was half moon. So even for all these things to be lined up, if you're synchronizing your clock, it is rather important. And then if you pay attention, like between last year, for the last 3 years, a lot of the days, the synchronistic days, like the 777, the 88 all those, they just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. Like Friday the 13th happening like 6 or 7 times. This is because you're looking at a massive clock that people have been missing half of. Let's just face it, like most people only want to hear the good side of everything, and then so they're not seeing the bad side of things, but then they're not seeing the bad side of themselves. Or some people just want to focus on the bad side and never see the good side, and then even beyond that, getting to the point of where the whole bad and good thing, you cease to play that game, judging yourself and judging others. And you get into the center of yourself, and you...
Ladies and gentlemen, Welcome to the next generation of science.
Is there any way in which one's mind can be transformed?